but that's okay. So, I mentioned that this came out of the discussion about like versus love and things of that nature. And so this whole series came out of that because as I was studying that, as I mentioned, I'll go back and we'll take a good fresh look at that. It just really culminated in let's talk about how we should treat one another. So obviously, from the previous 5 classes, we should treat one another pretty well. We should treat each other kindly. We should treat each other. We should forgive one another, bear one another's burdens. We looked at a lot of the things that the Bible says we should do one to another. This is one of them, John 13:34. A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. By this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if you have love one to another. And so this particular passage is the culmination of pretty much everything we've been talking about. It's all about love. So looking at the meaning of the word love, and I think we will accept that we are to love one another. I think we know that, so that's not what everything we're going to spend time on, as I mentioned before. But I do, in order to compare these things, we really do need to understand what we're talking about. I don't like semantic debates, but it is important to have semantic discussions sometimes. And love is one of those areas. Obviously, that love is translated, the Bible is translated using the word love so many times, but it isn't always the same thing. And so we do have to know what we're talking about. Right here, what we're talking about is the Greek word agape. And you've probably heard that word before, just so we're on the same page. An unselfish, sacrificial, purposeful devotion that seeks the highest good of another, regardless of feeling or merit. In other words, this is something that is not about yourself. You are even called on to sacrifice yourself. And it is that term purposeful devotion. That means, look, I intended to do this. It's an action that is taken. And it's for the highest good of someone else. It doesn't have anything to do with how you feel about that person. Brother Tharp.
And that's what I was going to say. This is the one where you love your enemies. And that comes back to the original question, love one another, regardless if I like them or not. So are we called on to like?
And we're going to get there.
I know.
We're going to get there. And that's,
it's only taken 5 weeks, sir.
But we have to, so now we're into looking at that. And so we need to look at love versus what the Bible has to say about like, what like means and all of that. I mentioned that before when we were discussing this, and that's still what it'll come down to. So this is love. This is the love we're talking about here. Not based on feelings, compatibility. It's not based on, hey, do we have the same personality? Do we have the same likes and dislikes? Are you a Next Generation fan or old school original series Star Trek fan? It has nothing to do with that. It is deliberate, volitional, and evidenced by action rather than affection. Now, that volitional is very important. It's not something that you just happen upon. It's not passive, so that's the deliberate portion where, when we talk about love often with it being romantic, I fell in love, right? that's a that's not so much an action that the way we describe it. It's just something that happened, right? So this is not talking about that. This is agape. This is deliberate action. But that volitional is very important. It's not something, it's something that you decide to do. So we're commanded to love. We've talked about this a little bit as well. We are commanded to love. But it's got to be more than just because, well, I guess I have to. Remember us discussing that? Well, I guess I have to love you. That's not love. So we are, it's almost like a paradox. We are indeed commanded to love. But if all we have for people is, well, I have to love you, so I guess I do. That's just not love. Yes.
Or even a step less, if you just do the actions, the fake it, that's not good enough. If you just treat that person that you're not supposed to like as if you love it, we go through all the motions. If we don't take it to heart, I guess you could say, it's missing something.
And let's see what it's missing.
Is it a sin? You can't generate this. Can you go through the steps? Where is it that it's okay and where is it that it's wrong? At what point?
Let's talk about that in a little bit. Let's look at some passages first. This is a deep discussion, by the way. That's why I said I don't know if we'll get through this today or if we'll continue it on. Usually I've been taking them 1 week and then we move on to the next subject, but this one we may take 2 weeks to get through. I don't think it'll take more than that. So John chapter 13, verses 34 and 35, our passage, a new commandment I give unto you, and we're going to talk about that new commandment in a moment, that you love one another as I have loved you, that ye also love one another. Now see, this is the part that says I can't just go through the actions.
What was the verse?
Oh, it's right there. John chapter 13, verses 34 through 35. Thank you. If you don't know, Brother Tharp really helps me stay on track. He gives me...
Actually,
but you probably knew, I just didn't display it. So a new commandment I give you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. That's right there is key, that you can't just go through the actions, because when he says love one another, and he's talking about agape, and he's talking about seeking someone else's best good, he does give some qualifications to it. As I've loved you. So now we've got a standard. Right? So Christ so loved the world. Well, I have to love you. That's not the depiction that we have of Christ. We've already got a standard that says that doesn't quite fit it. Brother Tharp.
I don't know if I questioned this last time, but I was thinking about this. Is this really, Jesus says a new commandment. But we're told that we can find in the Old Testament where God tells us to love one another.
Yes. We'll talk about it in a moment.
Okay.
No, it's a good question. We're going to get there in just a moment. Because that's the thing that really jumps out right away. And so, yeah. But just dealing with this, how we love, again, verse 35 of John 13, by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, if you have love one to another. Now looking at 1 John 4, 7 and 8, beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone that loveth is born of God and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love. Now, this gets to Brother Tharp's question before. I know he's asked a million of them already, but one of those questions was about what happens if you're not feeling this. Now, this is a bit of an indictment of that, right? So, how do we reconcile it? Well, again, it's not about how I feel. It's not about feeling compelled to do it either. We don't do it just because we're compelled. We do it because we have concern for someone else. Now, how do we get that? If I came to Christ, then I have to know God loved me. I have to know that. How else could I come to Christ? He sacrificed himself for me. How else could I come to Christ without knowing what God's love is? So that's how I get it. And this may take some time, really, to perfect love. How many in here have love perfected? Okay, then I'm not the only one that hasn't mastered love. It's work. So if someone, especially who's new to Christ, doesn't quite get it, we all understand that. We're still working on perfecting love. We're still working on 1 Corinthians 13. So that's a natural thing. But how do you do it? You read God's word. There is no other way. It's not about just somebody's examples. It's not about somebody else's words. It is truly reading God's word that it will make a difference. Why? Because you will see examples of sacrificial love where God gave himself. God literally sacrificed his only begotten son. His son gave himself willingly. And if that doesn't eventually touch you, then there's something wrong, as the Bible just said here. There's something wrong with your relationship with God, and that needs to be fixed first. Michael.
I was just going to say, it's the repetitiveness. If you have a problem with that, you read it over and over and over, and it'll sink in. It's kind of like, not really the same, but they say, and this actually works, if you're in a bad mood, smile. Force yourself to smile. And you'll find, if you do that for 5 minutes, you'll find that your mood has changed. And it's the same thing. You've got to force yourself to keep studying, keep reading, and it'll change your heart.
Yes, and that's a good example in the sense of, especially in the sense of, it's a deliberate action to change something about yourself. And this is an aspect that we just talked about of love. It's deliberate. You have to. It's an action. It's not passive. Brother Tharp.
What Michael says, definition of fake it till you make it. You're not happy, you smile, you're faking it. And that a little bit applies to what we're talking about here, because intellectually I can understand God loved us. We're supposed to imitate Jesus. We're supposed to imitate the qualities that God has. We understand that God loves everybody. I should love everybody. But obviously, if somebody murders a family member, that's going to be super hard.
Yeah, and we usually look at that extreme, and it would be hard. And it's not unfair to look at it. We've talked about this before. We look at that extreme, but here's the question. The person that has 12 items in the 10 items or less line, do you want them to go to hell, or do you want them to be saved?
How about the guy in the 405? Can we exempt him?
Yeah. Do you see, there are things, though, we can be offended, greatly offended. And you've seen people just fly off the handle at people over small things. And we still need to want for people to be well. Now, we may not have it mastered for the guy who attacks our family, but we don't have to jump there. And again, that has nothing to do with your question. That has to do with our progression. We need to start with simple things. Are we loving to our family members? Do we want their best good, or are we selfish? Is it all about me? So that's the first step. And we take steps with one another. Are we I'm really getting ahead. I'm telling you a whole slide right now. So we can just probably skip that one when we get to it. But absolutely, these are things that we do. We have to try to love. Why? Some people as Christians act like this is all easy. I'm not supposed to be up here as a minister telling you this is hard. Love, that's one of the basics. I'm supposed to have that down right before I stand up here. Now, I don't think I fail at all aspects of loving my fellow man, but there are some things that are more challenging than others. That's just a reality. Again, I think we're better off if we're all honest with one another. Here are our successes, here are our failures. We work on our failures and we try to reinforce. We try to keep doing where we're good, we try to keep doing good. Where we're not so good, we try to bring that up. That's honesty. And that's productive for all of us. Brother Tharp.
It's weird, but the severity of the sin is inverse to how hard it is. Like, it's way easier not to kill somebody than it is to love everybody. Way easier not to cheat on my taxes. Way easier not to steal or to have an affair. Those things are considered bigger sins, but they're actually easier not to do than this. This is, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to master.
And we're also going to talk a little bit about that as well in connection with that new commandment. So hold that thought for a moment as well.
Mindfulness.
Romans 5 and 8. I'm just going to read these. I think we're getting it. But God commendeth. I want to get to the next slide. But God commendeth his love toward us in that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. Again, talk about things that will help us to understand the love Christ had for us. He said, love us, that we should love as he's loved. And this is one of those examples. And then 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, talks about what love is. So God doesn't just let us define it all for ourselves. It's not, if we did, you would have one idea when I say love and I'd have another. And so he says, charity, that's love, in many of your translations. Charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself, is not puffed up, does not behave itself unseemly, seeketh not her own, is not easily provoked, thinketh no evil, rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth, beareth all things, believeth all things, hopeth all things, endureth all things. These aspects, these attributes of what love is, allow us to work on things piece by piece, little by little, aspect by aspect. We can try to grow our own ability to love one another. Because when you go through this, you start to really see it's about setting aside feeling, not becoming robots. Not that you become dispassionate or uncompassionate, but rather that's not your driving force, is how I just feel about a person. Love as a new commandment. Now this is an interesting one. A lot of people have a lot of things to say about that. Well, Christ wasn't really saying it's new because it's in the Old Testament. Just to put it out there, he is talking about a new aspect. There's no reason for him to say it, that I have a new commandment if there's nothing new about this commandment. But of course we see love one another in the Old Testament. So how do we reconcile that? This is what we're going to see is that there is a new depth that is being talked about here. There's a new standard that's being given. The standard has nothing to do with your human affections or feelings, but rather it is about divine sacrifice. And in that, it's different. It's new. And so let's take a look at this. New Testament passages, Ephesians chapter 5, verse number 2, and walk in love as Christ also has loved us and hath given himself for us an offering and sacrifice to God for a sweet smelling savor. And 1 John 3:16, hereby perceive we the love of God, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brethren. So the standard that we see in the New Testament is that of sacrifice. Right? Sacrificing yourself, even if it means to the point of sacrificing your very life. Because that's the example that Christ gave, right? Now let's take a look at the Old Testament. Leviticus 19, verses 17 and 18, thou shalt not hate thy brother in thine heart. Thou shalt in any wise rebuke thy neighbor and not suffer sin upon him. Thou shalt not avenge nor bear any grudge against the children of thy people, but thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. That's the standard that he gave. So there's love. Love your neighbor as yourself. And the other Old Testament one happens to be in the New Testament. Matthew 22, verse 36, because he's talking about Leviticus here. And verse 36, he says, Master, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. Now look at the terminology for loving God. What's the limit?
All in.
All in.
No limit.
No limit. Complete love, right? Now, continue on. This is the first and great commandment, verse 38, verse 39. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Notice what he says about loving your neighbor. It's a little different than what's in the New Testament. Now, this is not to say God's principle has ever changed, but the commandment under the Old Testament is love your neighbor as yourself. But under the New Testament, we see it going as a commandment so much further than it did in the Old Testament law. That was always the principle, not to just be at a point of, well, I have to do this. Even under the Old Testament law, it wasn't intended for us to just get to a point of, well, here are the 10 commandments. As long as I keep these, we saw the rich young ruler with that. That's never been the intention, that God has a principle he wanted to teach man. And man couldn't live up to the bare minimum. And that's what the law was. Brother Tharp.
Do you think the new commandment is leveled up to the commandment of equal to how we love God?
Yes. Yeah, there is no limit now, and that is the key. Here's the next point. The key is esteeming others greater than yourselves. In other words, it's humbling yourself. So if you humble yourself, right? If I humble myself, I've lowered myself. Now I'm in similar relationship. It's not exactly the same as God, but it's a similar situation, right? If I love Brother Merrick as I love myself, I'm saying, oh, we're on equal level. That's one thing. But if I humble myself, now I've elevated him, right? Have I not? Isn't that much more like our relationship with God?
Yes.
That's how we are to love one another today.
Amen.
So when he says it's a new commandment, I think we do it a disservice by saying, well, it's not really new. I've heard people try to explain it that way, but that nuance, it is a nuance, but it's an important one. It's contained in those verses. You compare these New Testament passages to the Old Testament passages, because Christ, as he was living, pointed to that Old Testament passage, and it's not the same. It's so much greater now that we're called on to do. Brother Tharp.
Is there a difference in how we love one another in the body versus the world? In other words, am I to esteem others outside the body greater than myself also?
Yes.
No difference?
No difference. Now, when we talk about something like in Galatians saying, as we therefore have opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially those of the household of faith, we see a priority there. But, that's again talking about us doing good. But now I encounter someone within the body and I have an opportunity to do good. And I encounter somebody who is my enemy and I have an opportunity to do good. I should do good in both of those situations. Now, wherein is one greater than the other at that point? It's the same as sin. There's no sin that's greater than the other. It all has the same consequence. Our love should be the same no matter who. Now, practically, and let's not be impractical about this, some things are going to be more difficult than others. But that doesn't mean the call isn't the same. We keep working on it, and we have to trust God will take care of us, but we must be sincere in always trying to improve. Find where your limit is. Think about it. Really think about it. And this is one of those things that unless you're really confident, you don't have to share with everybody else. You just need to be honest with yourself. Where's your limit for loving someone? Michael.
This kind of really hits home about, I've read it in other places in the Bible, but I've never focused on this, with all your heart, which, that's standard. But then it says, with all your soul. And then it says, with all your mind. It's a mindfulness. If you control your mind and concentrate on it, your heart and soul will know it more.
Yeah, and what's left out of that?
Huh?
And what's left out? If you've done that, what part aren't you using to love?
Feelings.
It's not about feelings. That's it.
I don't love my breath.
It's in every aspect of our being.
Yeah.
Philippians 2 verse 3, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. And again, that's a guiding principle there. Other people better than ourselves. And if we do this, we can accomplish love. The problem is when our feelings do activate and a person has offended us, then we have a hard time putting them ahead of us.
Yeah.
We have a real hard time doing that then. Why? Because maybe I want to get back at them. Maybe I want to show them how strong I am. Maybe it becomes all about me because the feelings have been activated. But if I'm able to keep my mind about me, if I'm able to keep God's word in mind and remember it's not about me, they are greater than me, then I'd be able to do it. Brother Tharp.
I know how hard the love your enemy part is, but another aspect that is really could be even harder is when when somebody you like or love really offends you, that's a hard one also.
Indeed.
When they break that trust or break that love, that's a hard one.
Someone who's close to you, I mean, but again, you're talking about the feelings involved. You're talking, when somebody breaks trust, there's strong feelings involved there. So, absolutely. We may actually get to this part. That's good. Prefer one another. I put this on the board last week. Yes, it was last week. And prefer one another. And I'm bringing these same passages again. Romans chapter 12, verse 10, be kindly affection one to another with brotherly love and honor, preferring one another. And Philippians 2, 3, and 4 again. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind let each esteem other better than themselves. Look not every man to his own things, but every man also on the things of others. So this one looks like it's talking maybe a little bit more like, but it's not. It's still talking about that idea of elevating someone else greater than yourself. And so how do we factor in like there? This is the love aspect. We are to love one another. So let's look at to like. Now this is what we were talking about before. This is where it does get tricky. So I really wanted to look at this from a biblical perspective. The challenge is there's not a lot of things that address this in the Bible. Why? By definition, and different people might say different things about to like. What does it mean? And I thought about just putting the question out there, but rather I want to just give the definition. If we want to discuss it from there, we can. To like is a verb. That title up there was to say like versus love, but that's okay. To like is a verb. It is to feel affection for someone. This is one of the aspects of the definition. To enjoy being with someone. So this is a dictionary definition of like, and looking at different dictionaries, you'll find similar. Of course, there's all sorts of usages of the word like, but this is the one we're talking about, how people feel toward one another or treat one another, that sort of thing, versus any of the other, I can't remember, there might have been like 30 different usages for the word like. Where this is the one we're talking about, and I looked at many different dictionaries. It comes down to this aspect of things, and that is it's tied to our feelings. By definition. And that's where the challenge comes in applying the Bible to this and trying to see what the Bible has to say, because the Bible doesn't address a whole lot there. So when we talk about love, love is never about how we feel about a person or a situation. I may not feel good about a situation that a person's in or why they're in that situation, but if I love them, I'm seeking their best good. So it's never about our feelings. That's love. We'll always seek to do the best good by someone else. Always. That's what love is. Yes.
Love is never about how we feel. I think that maybe that should be love does not have to be about how we feel, because it often bleeds over.
Okay, let me say it in a different way. Love is never contingent upon how we feel, because that's a better way to put it. Yeah, love is never contingent upon it, because we may, obviously feel it allows for us to feel.
It's hard if you really love people. It's hard not to like them, except for when they're got some really bad qualities, and then you still exhibit love, but you don't want to necessarily be around them, subject yourself to them.
And this,
We should, I don't, see, I disagree with that you can love your fellow Christian and not like them.
Amen.
Like some people say, I can't get there. I understand what they're saying, but I disagree with it.
well, let's continue with that and see. And again, I'm not saying that's wrong, but again, for this to be a real conversation, we do have to be talking about the same thing, and that's usually where the problem comes in. We're talking about one person may be talking about one thing, another person's talking about another. So this is the definition that we're talking about, this idea of feeling an affection towards somebody or to enjoy being with someone. Examples. These aren't my examples. I decided to just use some examples that I found in the dictionary. I don't know what it is about that guy, but I just don't like him. That's a pretty basic example of the use of I don't like him. It has nothing to do, in this case, with he stepped on my toe, so I don't like him. It has nothing to do with he's really ugly, so I don't like him. It's not he smells bad, so I don't like him. It has nothing to do with anything like that. It's just, I don't know what it is about him. This is pure emotion, is it not?
Yes.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, there's reasons, you just haven't quantified them in your own.
But it is
He
a,
did step on your toes 5 or 6 times, you forgave him for that, and you think that's not why you don't like him, but
I understand what you're saying. There may be attributes, but I'm saying that's not a rational cognitive response. I have not reasoned through this and said, okay, I don't like this person because of this. So this is an example of what we're talking about. Like,
What we call more of a gut feeling.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Now, I grant that usually when there's something behind those feelings, sometimes we're not in touch with them. But it's still a feeling that's driving us. I think he likes you. Very simple. Usually I think someone's attracted to another person, right? Likes. Feeling. What is it that you like or dislike about him most? Very basic type of scenario. There's a reason I'm putting these up here. She says she likes him as a friend, but she's not attracted to him. Again, a little more dealing with feelings than something else. My boss was a tough guy, but I liked him for his honesty. That one's a little bit more quantifiable. He says, I like his honesty, but I liked him for his honesty. So all of these are dealing with the word like. Here's the challenge that we have. If we look at all of these things, we don't have Bible references that call on us and command us or tell us how we should treat one another in the sense of like. This is just a reality. I've looked. Now, look, I don't know everything, but I've been searching, and I can't find anything that regulates, whether by commandment, by even example, that really deals with this aspect of things. Now, there's still something more there that I'll talk about in a moment. But in this like versus love, we are called upon directly to love everyone. Family, friends, neighbors, strangers, and indeed enemies. And yes, we can have enemies because the Bible tells us to love our enemies. It wouldn't tell us to do that if we didn't have them. Now, we shouldn't be making enemies, but that doesn't mean everyone's going to like us. And if someone's out to do harm against us, that, just by its definition, is an enemy. That's not by your own choosing, but that's who that is, and we are to love them. So that's a hard call. That's something to rise to. But the question at hand is, are we ever called upon to like anybody? Now, I'm opening that question not only to enemies or people out in the world, but Christians, family members. Are we ever called on to like anybody? Given what we just talked about for the word like.
The part where we're supposed to prefer them and be with them, I think that crosses over into that area.
It does not.
I know you say that, but I feel like it does.
Well, take a look at it. Study it. Really. I mean, when you read it that way, it looks that way. And there's a reason I put it out there. Because I thought, aha. But then I study it, and that's just not contextually what it's talking about. It's still talking about something that, look, we can have no connection whatsoever. So, I'm not suggesting that there is no connection, no regard to this idea of the kindly affection toward one another. Because especially in the body, we are called upon with brotherly love. And I do believe there's an aspect of that links that to a kind affection. We understand you can have what you call a love-hate relationship with your family. You fall out with them, but you love them. There may be times you don't want to be around them, but you always come back. Am I right or am I wrong? So there's a bond there. Now, as Christians, are we like a family or are we a family? We are a family. So that brotherly love would apply there as well. So I do find it very hard to apply everything about coming together as a community within the church, within the body, and I'm just going to say, I don't like this person. I don't see how that connects. And so here's the real problem we have. This is why we're discussing this, why we talk about it. Because people use this as a reason to hate one another. Let's just be honest. We want an excuse to dislike somebody, to really treat them in a way, well, I'm not going to be around them. When I see them coming, I'm going. We want an excuse for that. We want a reason for it. And so God tells us to love one another. So it can't be, well, I hate this person. Okay, I'll love them. I'll seek their best good, but I will never talk to them. So if we get past that person that's looking for an excuse to hate, can we acknowledge that there are people who you might have more in common with than others? Just let me hold. Is it on this particular point?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that you said, I dislike that person. I can like somebody, I can tolerate somebody and be around them, and I can like somebody more. And I think you're right, absolutely. When we start saying we dislike somebody, that's just another way of saying we don't love them. So I do not believe that as a Christian we should be using the dislike.
Right.
I like them a little bit, I like them a lot. It's going to be in a spectrum. We can't like everybody the same. But to dislike somebody, I think, is wrong.
Yes. Yeah, this is the key that I think I'm trying to get to is there are people who are just looking for an excuse.
Amen.
And then there are those who are going to act sincerely. Now, we can't ignore everything just to deal with the people who are looking for an excuse. There might be some people that have more of a common bond. Um, if you like baseball and I like baseball, we might go to games together, so we might spend more time together than someone else who doesn't like baseball. It's not because I dislike the person. It's not even because I'm elevating someone else. We just have a common connection. Just like we saw Paul did with his craft. Have a common connection, and there were things to be shared there that weren't shared with other people. So we may see that, but it's very different from dislike. So I don't see where God calls on us anywhere to like everybody. I just don't. However, what he does call upon us to do is going to lead us to be kind to everyone, kindly affection to everyone. And that just means that you're going to develop some sort of common bond with anyone you come in contact with. Now, it may take some work. So it may not be the feeling. It may not be, well, I just like this person. You may have to work. If there's someone it seems like you don't click with, that's the person you need to work on talking with. Do you see what I'm saying? Because it's not about feeling. We're trying to love. So let's forget about the whole like thing. Am I doing everything I can do to love my fellow man? So if that's my excuse, well, I don't have to like everyone. No, I'm called on to love. Are you really loving? Because I'd venture to say you might have a problem there. Brother Young, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I
I'm sorry.
do. No, like you see, you pointed out correctly that it's an excuse to hide one's weakness or one's tendency towards sinning. Very clearly, that you look at the book of James, chapter 2, you don't differentiate your feelings by the outward appearance. And then James 4 say that if you know what is good and you don't do it, it's a sin. It is there defined for you. And over the years, we come up with phrases like cleanliness is next to godliness. So if you're not clean, too bad, you stay away. You want to be friendly, you have to be friendly. You know, you have to be friendly. You say it to strangers also. Things like that, you come up with phrases, you act on them, and then they become part of your life, which is contradictory to the teachings of Jesus Christ. And the other thing is about the new commandment. My take is Christ have come and nailed that sin of law and death, that is the Old Testament commandment, to the cross. He's not going to leave us empty. A new commandment, that means, like you say, the intensity has increased, that he is actually predicting his, prophesying his death, that he's going to lay down his life. When he chastised Peter, saying that, are you able to lay down your life for me? So he's predicting, foretelling his death. And that is the new law, that's the new commandment. And according to John again in chapter 4, I think, 3:16 or so, 17 you quoted also. He said this is the new commandment of his is we believe in Jesus Christ, and that you believe, you lay down your life one for another. That's simple. I mean, I don't know why do we have so many commandments, lumped together in today's world, in today's practice of Christianity.
Because we're looking for loopholes. We're looking for ways to get around it. And I say that generically, but what do we need to do? At some point, we always have to get back to us. All I can ever do is control me. That's it. I have a hard enough time doing that. So I focus on what am I doing. I can't control what my fellow man does. Am I being loving? And this is got to be the key. because love is not going to treat people harshly. That doesn't mean they won't rebuke people for wrongdoing, but they're not going to treat somebody harshly. You're not avoiding someone, because how can you seek their best good if you're avoiding them? So it's basically, I didn't get to the rest of my slides, but that's okay. It comes down to, I think we get it. It really comes down to, forget about like. Forget about something vague. Forget about something that people might quibble over. Are you really loving your fellow man? If you do that, everything else is going to be taken care of, is it not? Both of you have pointed out that the law really gets taken care of with these commandments. Christ pointed it out first, of course, so don't take credit from him. But you talk about that, right? So that's the key. And everything else is just a distraction.
Dion, I'd like to add one more point.
Sure.
About marriage, divorce, and remarriage. I know I'm going to get in trouble with Tiger. The wife, the scripture says the wife is supposed to submit to the husband, but the husband is supposed to love the wife, or commanded to love the wife. Right? We have defined here very clearly what is love. Absent submission from the wife is the husband to continue to love and lay down his life for the wife.
Absolutely.
100%, yes.
100%.
100%.
And yet today we have, what do you call that, 50%, at least 50% divorce rate in this country. Many, unfortunately, subscribe to call themselves Christians. So we have to teach this over and over. Like you said, you have to learn this really deep and appreciate why from the beginning it was not so. You don't put your wife away.
Yeah, this is fundamental. As far as, are you supposed to do what you're supposed to do no matter what the other person's doing? Yes, in all cases. And so there's no special circumstance for marriage. No special circumstance given there where it says, well, husbands, love your wife if your wife is submissive, and your wives are supposed to love your husbands. Right? And then when you talk about submitting one to another, where you will agree one with another, that's because you're esteeming each other greater than yourselves. Is it not? All of that's supposed to happen. Now, if there's a breakdown on one side, it does affect the other party. But the other party is still called on to do exactly what God is telling them to do. Brother Tharp. And then we're at the end of our time.
We started a couple minutes late, so, okay. And that whole thing about marriage is, even in arranged marriages where you weren't eros in love to start with. So, but my point is about love. I don't see how love doesn't lead to like. And if we look at examples of the people around Jesus, John laying his head on Jesus' breast, Mary wiping Jesus' feet, it's beyond life. They're into a love that's not the love we're talking about.
There's affection there.
Yes.
Absolutely. But now that doesn't necessarily extend to everybody in the examples that you gave. And so I spent.
I'm just saying we do see that.
We absolutely see that. And I spent a lot of time digging into this. And so, you know me, I won't be dogmatic about something that I just can't find. I agree with you from just a gut standpoint. But I'm not going to tell anyone that the Bible says this about like, because it doesn't give us any commandments about liking. It does tell us to love. And all of those issues still are going to come under love. Now, how are you going to grow a common relationship, an affection relationship with one another? By seeking one another's best good. You gave the example of an arranged marriage. Well, there's no feeling there at all in an arranged marriage. But I've known people who are in an arranged marriage. They've been married for a long, long time. And look, it's not necessarily the way we think, the way we've been trained to think about it. But there's no feeling to when you come together. But if you are loving your husband and your husband's loving the wife and the wife is loving the husband from an agape standpoint, seeking, elevating one another, really no affection is going to develop in that. So again, I do agree with you from a gut. I just want to say love is going to be the key because I can find that in the Bible. Is that okay?
Okay.
All right. We're going to close on that note. Sorry for going over. Sorry for starting a bit late as well.
Snacks fall.
That's not very loving.
Sounds like he doesn't like you.
I like it.